The US says China may be using countries like India to bypass American tariffs. More than 40 countries are on the list, which Washington calls a shadow transshipment network. The assessment comes in a new White House report called the Great Transshipment Scam, which alleges that Chinese goods are being rerouted through third countries before reaching the American markets. So what is this transshipment scam and why is India being pulled into it? The report says Chinese goods can be routed through third countries where they may undergo minor processing, repackaging or relabeling before being shipped to the US. Why do this? Because Chinese goods can face much higher US tariffs. The report states this practice became more common after 2018 when the Trump administration first imposed Section 301 tariffs on China over trade practices it considered unfair. So for example, if a Chinese product is presented as an Indian product, it could potentially avoid the higher tariffs. That is what Washington calls illegal transshipment. But simply moving goods through another country is not illegal. The problem occurs when Chinese goods are relabeled to appear as products from a third country. But why is India on the list? India is placed in Tier 1 of the report, a category called Diversified Scale Leaders that also includes Canada, the European Union, Israel, Japan, Mexico, South Korea and Taiwan. However, being in this category does not mean the US is accusing all Indian exports of tariff evasion. Instead, the report says India's large manufacturing base, significant trade volumes, and strong access to the US markets mean China-linked goods could potentially move through India within much larger legitimate trade flows. The report identifies the Pune-Gujarat-Chennai production belt covering pumps and compressors as a representative corridor of potential transshipment exposure. However, it does not clearly identify any Indian company or establish that these manufacturing centers are illegally transshipping Chinese goods. So how big is the problem for the US? The White House estimates that goods rerouted through third countries could be worth anywhere between $40 billion and $303 billion annually. One US Commerce Department analysis estimates that around $67 billion worth of US-bound goods were transshipped from China through Mexico, India and Vietnam in 2025, resulting in an estimated $28 billion in lost tariff revenue. But this is where an important distinction comes in. The report acknowledges that a decline in direct Chinese shipments to the US, combined with rising imports from other countries, does not prove tariff evasion. Some of the shift could reflect legitimate changes in production, investment and sourcing. But Washington says the scale and timing of these shifts call for closer scrutiny. The US plans to use an AI-powered system called Detective Border System to analyze shipment data to flag suspicious shipments. So what does this mean for India? For Indian exporters, the biggest impact could be more scrutiny and more documentation. Companies using Chinese components or inputs may need to clearly demonstrate that enough manufacturing or value addition took place in India for the product to legitimately qualify as Indian origin. And this comes as India and the US work on an interim trade agreement, which includes plans to set clear rules of origin. But as the US tightens its crackdown on Chinese goods, countries in China's supply chain are likely to face closer scrutiny. For Indian exporters, that could mean having to show more clearly that products labeled Made in India genuinely meet US rules of origin. Follow Business Standard for more such stories.